So I've got a really quick video today talking about Harpie's Feather Duster and why I'm probably not going to be playing it anymore in tournaments, as well as a lesser known card that's probably better in the current format. But first, let's go over Harpie's Feather Duster and why I've kind of lost faith in this card. The short and simple answer is there's just too many counters to Harpie's Feather Duster. One really blatant counter is Imperial Order. If you've ever played against Tri-Brigade, you know they always seem to have this card, but a lot of other decks are main decking it as well. Imperial Order is an obvious counter, because if your opponent has this card, they're always going to be able to counter Harpie's Feather Duster, but that's not the only example I have. Against back row heavy decks that can play a card like Trap Trick, you do have to be cautious of using Harpie's Feather Duster, because they can use Trap Trick in order to set Waking the Dragons from their deck, so that when Harpie's Feather Duster resolves, they destroy the Waking the Dragons. So against a lot of back row heavy decks, Harpie's Feather Duster can be more of a liability, and those decks are more likely to play the Eldritch engine as well, which means Harpie's Feather Duster has even less viability in those matchups. However, the thing that really solidifies my opinion of Harpie's Feather Duster in the format is the new card, Lord of the Heavenly Sky Prison. This is a monster that you can reveal in your hand, and it makes it to where your set spells and traps cannot be destroyed by your opponent. And believe me, Lord of the Heavenly Sky Prison is going to be played in the upcoming formats. You're going to see quite a bit of it. It's viable not just only in back row heavy decks, but in quite a few decks outside of that. After all, protecting your set spells and traps is only part of its effect. But those were only a few examples of why I'm not going to be playing Harpie's Feather Duster. You also have a card like Solemn Judgment, as well as Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, which didn't get touched at all on the ban list. And if your opponent is feeling particularly sacky, they can also cross out Designator your Harpie's Feather Duster. And that's a few too many cards for me to want to run Harpie's Feather Duster, and if you think your opponent still isn't going to see these, remember that these decks also run quite a few consistency cards. You're just not likely to be able to use Harpie's Feather Duster in the matchups that it would matter against. And if that weren't already enough, there's just too many good alternatives to Harpie's Feather Duster in the upcoming format, some of which are completely generic. Finally, let's talk about Spiritualism, and why I think this is a good option for spell and trap removal. This card is very simple. Its effect reads, return one spell or trap card to the opponent's hand, and importantly, this card's activation and effects cannot be negated. Since this card's effects cannot be negated, this means this is a normal spell card that cannot be negated by Imperial Order. That also means it's the only top deckable spell card that gives you an out to Imperial Order in the later game. This card is also really valuable in a deck like Adagnister, where you can bait out your opponent's Imperial Order and then just go ahead and combo off. Your opponent's still going to have the Imperial Order, but if you go ahead and do your full setup, it's going to be a lot less impactful later on. Spiritualism is also really good against a Protect the Floodgate style scenario. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been at a tournament, my opponent just activates Red Eye's Fusion, summons Dragoon, sits there and protects a Floodgate. Spiritualism is a one-card way to ensure that you are getting that Floodgate off of the field. Then all you have to do is just play around that one Dragoon and whatever other back row your opponent might happen to have. It's also a really easy way to cause your opponent to misplay. If they think they can protect a Floodgate, they're likely to be playing very differently than they would if they don't have that Floodgate. So you can go ahead and let your opponent flip the Floodgate in less optimal scenarios in order to bait your opponent into letting you do things, which is something that's pretty valuable. So in this scenario, Harpie's Feather Duster does nothing more than bait the Dragoons. However, Spiritualism actually solves the problem. The final example I want to give for why I think Spiritualism is good right now is actually Mystic Mine, the card that Konami really should have banned. There is no negating Spiritualism, so it doesn't matter how many Dark Bribes your opponent has or Solemn Judgments they have, you can always bounce the Mystic Mine. And if your opponent has Field Barrier already on the field, that just means that they're losing their win condition, with no ability to stop it. And in general, Spiritualism has the ability to play around all of the cards that I listed as reasons why I won't be playing Harpie's Feather Duster in the upcoming format. So I hope you will give Spiritualism a chance, because I think it is going to be really good moving forward. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you saw, remember to like, comment, and/or subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and I know I appreciate it.